Good evening. Welcome to South Asia Newsline. I'm Uzma Jafri. Here are the top stories we are tracking for you on Friday, the 18th of February. Indian court orders death for 38 for deadly 2008 serial bomb blasts. Top US General McKenzie warns of Islamic State presence in Afghanistan. And Nepal's ruling coalition fails to reach consensus on US-funded MCC deal. And now for all the details. An Indian court on Friday sentenced 38 persons to death and ordered life in prison for 11 others for a series of bomb blasts in 2008 in Ahmedabad city that killed more than 50 people. A group called the Indian Mujahideen had claimed responsibility for the explosions. A defense lawyer said they would appeal the verdict in a higher court.
A special sessions court in India on Friday sentenced 38 men to death and ordered life in prison for 11 others for a series of bomb blasts in 2008 in Ahmedabad city that killed at least 56 people and wounded more than 200. A group called the Indian Mujahideen had claimed responsibility for the explosions on July 26, 2008 that badly shook the western state of Gujarat, where Hindu-Muslim riots in the year 2002 are believed to have killed thousands. Judge A.R. Patel ordered the punishment after the prosecution pressed for the death sentence, describing the incident as a rarest of rare case in which innocent lives were lost.
आज टोटल 38 एक्यूज को ऑनरेबल डेजिग्नेटेड जज फॉर बॉम्ब ब्लास्ट केसेस उन्होंने 38 एक्यूज को आज हैंगिंग किया है और 11 एक्यूज को लाइफ टाइम की सजा दी है.
A defense lawyer said they had sought lenient sentences as the convicts have already spent more than 13 years in prison and that they would definitely appeal the verdict in a higher court.
In news from Pakistan, lashing out at the ruling PTI-led government over the recent hike in petrol prices and its economic and foreign policies, PML-N Vice President Maryam Nawaz said that the people of Pakistan are looking towards the opposition, adding that the risk of a no-trust motion in the parliament should be taken now. This comes as opposition parties have decided to hold anti-government long march rallies over the issue of rising inflation.
Opposition PML-N party Vice President Maryam Nawaz on Thursday slammed Pakistan Prime Minister Imran Khan over the recent hike in petrol prices and his economic and foreign policies and said that the opposition's planned no-trust motion to topple the incumbent government is a risk that should be taken now. Talking to reporters, Maryam said she was hopeful of the success of the proposed no-trust move by the opposition because Imran Khan is on his last legs as he has destroyed the economy and failed to control the frequent price hike.
तो मैं ये समझती हूँ कि अगर ऑपोजिशन इस वक्त एक्ट नहीं करेगी तो ऑपोजिशन भी बराबर की लोग उसको बराबर का जिम्मेदार ठहराएंगे. तो हमने अपने अवाम के पास वापस जाना है. इलेक्शन में हमने उन्हीं के पास वापस जाना है. तो लोग ये पूछेंगे कि जब हम तकलीफ से गुजरे थे तो आप कहाँ थे. बाकी मैं ये समझती हूँ कि इंशाअल्लाह ताला उम्मीद है कि कामयाबी होगी क्योंकि इमरान खान साहब इस वक्त अपनी लास्ट लेग्स पे हैं. तो मैं ये समझती हूँ कि ये एक ऐसा रिस्क है जो लेना चाहिए.
Meanwhile, opposition Pakistan People's Party chairman Bilawal Bhutto Zardari also said on Thursday that every member of the parliament would run a campaign to bring a no-confidence motion against the PTI-led government. The opposition parties have also announced anti-government long march rallies on February 27 and in late March over the issue of rising inflation.
More on news from Pakistan. Microsoft co-founder turned philanthropist Bill Gates visited Pakistan on Thursday and met Prime Minister Imran Khan to discuss polio eradication. Pakistan and Afghanistan are the last countries where polio remains endemic.
Microsoft co-founder Bill Gates met with Pakistan Prime Minister Imran Khan on Thursday during his first ever visit to South Asian nation to discuss polio eradication. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, of which Gates is co-chair, is part of the Global Polio Eradication Initiative, a major project between governments and international organizations. Taking to Twitter, he said he's optimistic that if everyone remains vigilant, polio can be eradicated in Pakistan. He also attended a meeting of the Afghanistan Inter-Ministerial Coordination Cell along with Pakistan National Security Advisor Moeed Yusuf and met with Ministry of Health and Planning officials. He was also conferred Pakistan's second highest civilian award by the country's president. Pakistan, along with neighboring Afghanistan, is one of the 2 countries in the world where polio continues to circulate. No children have been paralyzed by wild polio in Pakistan in more than a year, but the virus was detected in December in sewage samples in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province.
Moving on. Government employees in Pakistan-administered Kashmir have raised concerns over non-payment of their salaries for the past 5 to 6 months and over an ordinance brought by the government that has ripped them off their permanent government positions.
Ad hoc employees in Pakistan-administered Kashmir have raised concern over non-payment of their salaries for the past several months and over an ordinance brought by the government that has ripped them of their permanent government positions. The disgruntled employees claimed that due to changes through an ordinance by Pakistan PM Imran Khan's PTI-led government, ad hoc and contractual employees who were appointed after December 31, 2020 are being rendered jobless, and those before that period during tenure of previous PML-N government are not being paid salaries for the past 5 to 6 months. They demanded re-regularization based on merit.
और ये बड़ा काबिल अफसोसनाक पहलू है कि अगर एक गवर्नमेंट कानून के तहत कोई काम करे और आने वाली गवर्नमेंट वही काम करे तो पहली गवर्नमेंट के किए हुए काम को गैर कानूनी और गैर आईनी डिक्लेयर किया जाए, कहा जाए और अपने काम को आईनी समझा जाए। मैं ये समझता हूँ कि ये तकरीबन ये यकीनन दोहरा म्यार है और गवर्नमेंट को ये म्यार तय करना चाहिए।
हमारी रिक्वेस्ट है कि आप एडहॉकिज्म को का दरवाजा जैसे एक्ट में बंद किया गया इसको बंद रहने दें और जिन लोगों को आपने मुस्तकिल कर दिया इनको करें और आने वाले लोगों को आप पीस ऑफ माइंड दें, सुकून दें, आप लोगों को नौकरियां दें, रोजगार दें, लेकिन पीस ऑफ माइंड के साथ।
The Association of Government Employees blame that this is not the case in Pakistan, where scores of employees have been regularized as per the previous legislation. But the people in the illegally occupied region still do not have access to equal rights and have to face exploitation.
In news from Nepal, a meeting of Nepal's ruling coalition held on Friday concluded without reaching any consensus regarding the ratification of the US-funded Millenium Challenge Corporation Compact Agreement in the parliament. The next meeting in this regard will be held on Sunday.
The meeting of Nepal's 5-party ruling coalition held on Friday concluded without reaching any consensus regarding the ratification of the US-funded Millennium Challenge Corporation or MCC compact agreement in the parliament. The next meeting in this regard will be held on Sunday, reports suggest. The Millennium Challenge Corporation, a US government aid agency, had agreed in 2017 to provide $500 million in grants to fund an electricity transmission line and road improvement project in Nepal. Washington says the funds come with no strings and do not need to be repaid. However, opponents say that the agreement would undermine local laws and that Nepal would not have sufficient oversight over the board directing projects. Major political parties, including those forming the ruling coalition, are divided over whether to accept the money. Earlier on Wednesday, capital Kathmandu also witnessed fierce protest over the issue by small communist factions. The demonstrators asserted that MCC is not in the interest of Nepal. Reports suggest at least 123 activists had been detained and 9 police personnel injured in the melee as police had to use tear gas and water cannon to disperse the protesters.
Moving on. The Islamic State-Khorasan has been a major security challenge for the Taliban government since they swept to power in Afghanistan last August. 6 months since Taliban's rule, the US Central Command Chief, General Kenneth McKenzie, has expressed concerns about the presence of the Islamic State in Afghanistan. He said that America is still sorting out what is going to happen there.
The US Central Command Chief General Kenneth McKenzie on Thursday expressed concerns about the presence of the Islamic State or ISIS, an ideological foe of the Taliban in Afghanistan. In an interview shared on Facebook by the US Central Command Dari Pashto, McKenzie said that America is still sorting out what is going to happen since the Taliban came into power. Taliban seized control of Afghanistan in August last year after US-led foreign forces withdrew and Western-backed government collapsed. Since then, humanitarian crisis has worsened dramatically.
So I think, what we see developing in Afghanistan is ungoverned and undergoverned spaces, which is areas where ISIS traditionally flourish and where I think there is a risk. We know that ISIS does, in fact, have a practical desire to carry out external attacks against the United States, the homeland of the United States, and attacks against the homelands of our neighbors in Europe, and our friends in Europe and in other places. So I am concerned about what's happening in Afghanistan.
ISIS-Khorasan, claimed to have carried out several attacks in recent months on Taliban targets, remains unreconciled to the movement. Earlier, the Taliban Defense Ministry denied reports over the presence of foreign troops in Afghanistan and said that the security forces of the Islamic Emirate are ready to fight the terrorists. Meanwhile, the delegation of the Islamic Emirate, led by the acting Foreign Minister Amir Khan Muttaqi, arrived in Kabul on Thursday after a 5-day visit to the Gulf state of Qatar. The delegation met with the envoys of European Union, 16 European nations, envoys of Gulf states, as well as with Islamic scholars. According to Abdul Kahir Balki, a spokesman for the Foreign Ministry, the meeting focused on the humanitarian situation in Afghanistan, higher education, capacity development, humanitarian aid, and providing scholarships to the Afghan students. The delegation assured the EU that Afghan soil will not be used against any foreign country.
2,300-year-old Egyptian mummy Tutu is one of the only 6 mummies in India and was gifted by the Museum of Cairo in 1887. The mummy has been one of the main attractions of a museum in India's northwestern Jaipur city and continues to witness large footfall till date.
The mummy of Egyptian teenage girl Tutu, which is estimated to be 2,300 years old, is attracting tourists from across the country to a museum in India's northwestern Jaipur city. A number of tourists were seen enjoying the history at Albert Hall Museum by looking at various artifacts on display at the museum, including the mummy that has been the center of attraction. The mummy of Tutu, a member of a priest family that lived during the Ptolemaic period from early 300 BC to 30 BC, was brought from a museum in Cairo 130 years back. The preservation of the mummy is done by a team of experts who visit from Egypt.
हम इसमें बहुत ज़्यादा टेक्निकल चीज़ें हमारे द्वारा नहीं की जाती, बल्कि हम लोग इजिप्ट से इनके एक्सपर्ट को बुलाते हैं। 2011 में हमने एक्सपर्ट बुलाया था, 2016 में हमने एक्सपर्ट बुलाया था, पूरा मम्मी का एक्सरे कराया, पूरा उनको ट्रीटमेंट, फर्स्ट एड जो भी चाहिए था वो सब चीज़ें की यहाँ पे। और इसका एक्सरे भी हमने म्यूजियम में एक्सरे मशीन में किया था, इजिप्ट की टीम के सामने ही एक्सरे किया था। तो उनके द्वारा इसकी पोजीशन बहुत ही अच्छी स्थिति में बताई है, पूरी इसकी जो स्केलेटन है वो कंप्लीट एकदम ठीक है।
Built in 1876 as a memorial for the visiting Albert Edward, the Prince of Wales, the museum was thrown open to the public in 1887.
Well, that's all we have for you from South Asia this evening. Now our viewers can watch the show on SouthAsiaNewsline.com. You can also visit us on Facebook.com/SAsiaNewsline and follow us on Twitter @SAsiaNewsline. That's all in tonight's edition. We will see you same time next week. Have a great weekend. Good night.